Welcome once again, and we are live to my interviews with amazing people. And as you may have already been following some of these interviews, you will notice that there is a theme, and I have a lot of guests that come back onto the show simply because they are double amazing, triple amazing, quadruple amazing, and Dr. Ann Donnelly is one of those quadruple amazing people in my life. She is the author of Once Upon a Tinder, and some of you may have seen part one, and I felt, we had to cut it short, and I really wanted to get Dr. Ann back on because I felt like we needed to delve deeper. Welcome, Dr. Ann. How are you doing?
Oh, Dr. Kate, Divina Kate, thank you so much for having me back. And hello, everyone. It's great to be back with you. I'm quite excited about today.
Yeah. And Dr. Ann has several titles as well. Some of you will know her from Mystery School, and she's Divina Ann, and she's also a medical doctor and an author of an amazing book about dating. And I love this book. Now, I wanted to touch on some subjects in this. If you haven't read this book yet, to those people out there, please give it a whirl. And even if you are not dating, even if you're in a long-term marriage, I would highly recommend it because it's really about love. It's not really so much about the dating, even though there's lots of dating stories in there, and it's fantastic, and I love that. But it's really about love, and I feel like I've been married 14 years, and as somebody that's been married for a long time, it's important that that you are able to still have that romance and that that get that excitement, and this book just gives you a reminder of that. So, Anne, can you share a little bit about these dating experiences and you as an empowered woman? What inspired you to, first of all, write the book? So I don't think we really covered that last time. And why did you come from this angle, Well,
thank you for that question. I had been living this dating life for quite a while. The actual book spans over a period of about 3 years. And I chose specifically the dates that are there because they were the ones that I think I learned the most from, and maybe shifted the dynamics within myself, because when we are interacting with anyone else, all relationships are a reflection of ourselves and what's going on inside ourselves at any one given time. And this really gave me a huge, I suppose, when I was starting out in the dating world again, I had no clue, especially after 20 years of having dated someone. And because the scene had changed so much, I thought, well, gosh, I'm sure there are people in the same, dating categories as me. And I thought, well, everyone can learn a little bit from these things. And some of the stories are very funny. Some of them are a little bit more, heart-rendering as such. But whichever way, each one of us has those shared experiences. And I suppose what I wanted to show was that we don't have to take absolutely everything so personally, that we can use our own innate intelligence when it comes to these things as well. And sometimes when we're very emotionally caught up in something, we tend to blame others or project onto others. And I wanted to minimize that between men and women. And I also wanted to demonstrate that there are tools out there that we are a testimony to in the lineage and in the mystery school, and how these can be used to help us to really see beyond the everyday way in which we are living our lives. So yes, I started by actually writing the scenarios themselves. And I had on my telephone, I'd written down titles as I went along, because I would have a chat with some of my friends about what was going on in my life. And they were, number one, fascinated, but number two, they also felt that, there was quite a lot of comic moments in there. And as I started to write down things that I was saying, I realized that there's a lot that people, first of all, share, but also find funny and entertaining. So I wanted that to be part of the book as well. So there's a lot of different angles in there. So when I wrote, first of all of the scenarios down, I thought, gosh, how am I going to reach 22 chapters? So the other half of the book are all the lessons I learned in between, and the ways in which we can approach our relationships, and in particular, how they affect us, but also how we come to relationships ourselves. What is it that's inside us that's, number one, being triggered? Number two, how can we heal that? Number three, how can we be present to someone else who's going through a triggering time? And that's actually quite important as well. It's about that dynamic that is partly related to us. And although it's written in quite a style of learning about ourselves, we also have to understand that, you know, there's a lot of tenderness inside that. And although I've written down some of the medical causes for what we go through when we fall in love, I still want people to understand that there is an aspect of falling in love that can't be medicalized. You know, that it's part of the magic of falling in love as well. And but it is useful for us to, especially coming from myself as a more mature woman coming back into the dating scene, I'd already had a number of life experiences, and that really helped me to see myself more as well. And when I applied the tools on top of that, it really gave me a chance to explore where my part was to play in all of this, and how I could create a different reality, how I could create a different love life, how I could create a difference in the relationships that I was having.
So some of the things that I noticed in here when I was reading is that it you know, a lot of dating movies or dating books, it always seems to put the woman as maybe the victim. I don't know, or something. The women feels like it's all happening to her, and she's, you know, and that's the comedy. Whereas in this book, you come across, and I know you personally, so I know this to be true, as very strong and empowered. And even though things don't always go the way in which you may have hoped or indeed may have thought, you draw a lesson from it and you set your boundaries very clearly. Has this always been the way that you have approached, you know,
Great question. Absolutely not. In my younger days, you know, I was finding my way. I think that's the same for most women, because okay, our heart gets broken. We're all about, you know, the experience. We're in that love dynamic, and you know, with that, we're not seeing outside. You know, we've got the rose-colored spectacle glasses on, and everyone outside of us can see what's happening, and our nearest and dearest friends can give us advice. But when we're in it, we don't necessarily follow that advice. You know, we want to give things, you know, that second, third, fourth, fifth chance, depending on where our mood is. And I think as a woman as well, sometimes, you know, that can feel, that dynamic can be very, very powerful. Our feelings, our emotions can be very, very powerful. And that can push us to respond from a place of our hurt, and respond from a place of old wounds. And we know from metaphysics that if we do that, what happens is we recreate the same dynamic over and over and over again in our lives. And we really, really don't want to do that. If we want to break free from the patterns in our lives, we have to be able to really see ourselves. And that is where the advantages and the absolute, I would say, brilliance of the tools of the mystery school lie. because it applies an alchemical process to our evolution as human beings, and it accelerates that. Now, what does that mean practically in everyday life? We begin to see ourselves in the scenarios and the ways in which we are creating things again. We begin to see the people in our lives as mirrors of what is going on inside us. And it's then you really realize how incredibly wonderful these people in our lives actually are, the relationships in our lives actually are, because they are helping us to see ourselves. They are putting up a mirror and we're seeing ourselves, you know, with all the positives and, you know, with those aspects of ourselves that maybe we find more difficult to look at as well. And if we are really willing to work inside a relationship, then that can be the most amazing place for evolution for both parties, not just for one or the other. And sometimes you find that relationships then really come into difficulty, maybe where one person isn't just as willing to maybe move at the same pace. But that's okay, because we can work with that to a degree. But yes, that's usually where a lot of the difficulties can come. You know, when we're moving at slightly different paces, or maybe we're going in different directions. And so our compatibility is a big piece in relationships. You know, is the direction I'm moving in the same direction that you want to move in? Do I want to live in the same part of the world as you want to live in? You know, do I want children? Do you want children? The big questions in lives that we want to ask ourselves. And if we know these things relatively early on, then we can see what direction the connection is going, and, you know, avoid disappointment way down the line, when we've been holding on to this goal that is personal to me and maybe not personal to my partner. So we need to be truthful, both with ourselves and with each other, and, you know, to use that truth to navigate where the relationship is going.
I noticed that in the book, that you are very clear about what it is that you want to achieve and what it is that you want. And that might sound quite simple, but what I have noticed in the world is that many people don't know what they want. And they may be guessing as to what they want, or maybe they have, you know, some kind of, you know, okay, I think that's what I want, you know, that will make me happy because other people have told them that will make them happy. Yes. And when they get to that place, then they realize that doesn't make them happy. And then they feel like there's something wrong with them because they're not happy, because they've been told that they should be, you know, happy. So they really just don't know themselves. And this is what I notice in the book, is that you keep referring back to know thyself, to know what you want, set your boundaries. You know, do you want a long-term relationship? Do you want a bit of fun? Do you want, you know, to have dinner tonight? Or do you want to have a cup of tea and then go home? You know, what is it that you want? And I feel like, you know, the thread, or the, you know, the theme through the book is really reminding people all of the time, both if you're in a relationship or if you're dating, if you do not know what it is that you want, how can you expect anybody else to know?
And that, I suppose one could say that the unexamined life, you know, we need to examine what it is that is truly authentic and important for us as individuals. And there is an amazing path to help us with that. If you find that you're stuck, and, you know, particularly in terms of knowing which direction your life is going in, the tools of the school really help us with that, especially the life activation and Empower Thyself initiation as a really good beginning, because it teaches us about energy. And you will notice in the book that I talk a lot about self-care, and it really is, it sets the bar, because if you're really taking care of yourself, then that sends a message to whoever comes into your life. This is the standard that I'm setting. And that standard is, you know, a really good focus point for yourself as well. If you find that someone else is not, you know, treating you that way, or then you know where the bar is. You already know that. And with that comes the challenge then in how to communicate. Because we want, if there's someone that you really want as part of your life, then it's good to ask them, you know, how do they take care of themselves? What is it that, you know, is the central point in their life? What are their aims? What are their goals? This is how we find out about our compatibility. Because if someone else's goals are so different, then we know. Now, at the beginning of this book, you will have seen that a lot of what I was writing was geared towards discovery about what I really wanted in a relationship. So it was a number of shorter relationships where we negotiated, you know, amount of time to be together, which was really interesting, because that isn't always something that couples talk about when they first meet each other. You know, when is this likely to end? And that had to be a very honest conversation, especially in the beginning, because there was a deadline for this, you know, the first date to actually leave Ireland, and you know what was going to happen in terms of our continuing at that stage. And we said, no, we will be together for this period of time. And so that actually put a whole other dynamic onto the relationship. It actually was so much fun. We knew that we were going to be able to be together a certain number of, you know, days in the week, and what we were going to do, that we planned ahead, and it actually created a very together approach to the relationship, because we both had input into it. We both decided what our dates were going to be. We both had a huge impact on the time that we had together, and that created a lot of magic together. So it is about communication, about being open to what it is that you want. It's about knowing what your own desires are and knowing where you're at in life, because, you know, where you're at in life could be very different to where I'm at in life. And so my life lessons that came through this book are just a reflection of what is possible. It doesn't mean that it has to be the exact same for anyone that reads the book, but it gives you ideas about where to go and the questions to ask yourself and, you know, the person that you're thinking of dating. It's, you know, from that perspective, it's great. But it also gives you a little bit of direction about love, and I suppose the different types of love to expect. Yeah,
I liked this. I've actually marked it, and let's explore the 7 types of love as described by the ancient Greeks. I love this, and it dips into that and how they match up to modern day dating, which I thought was really lovely.
yes.
And it's really true, because when you read these, you can cast your mind back, or you can relate to a person, or, you know, a time when, you know, because, you know, as we know, one relationship could experience several of these different types of love. So,
Exactly.
It's not always a different person. It's, you know, maybe, and it's like, oh yes, this is what this is. And again, just bringing so much clarity to that, you know, what type of love do you want?
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Because that is going to affect the trajectory of the relationship as well. As a woman, we have much more power than we realize. And I just really want to speak to that a little bit, Kate, because as you were saying, that's at the beginning when you were talking about that sense of women being portrayed as victims, and it's not as popular to be depicted as a more empowered woman. And I'm not sure if that's because people tend to identify sometimes more with victimhood or not. But the truth is, and I'm not speaking to those genuine cases, who are out there where women are undergoing terrible abuse. That's not what we're talking about here. We're talking about, the average person who goes out there onto the dating scene. So just to clarify that, that's very important. But when we, it's really important to understand that as a woman, we often direct the direction. And if we are coming from old hurts, for example, if someone has maybe been unfaithful to us before, then if that is still a wound that is unhealed within us, we are effectively projecting that into our future because we expect that from the next relationship. We're not actually, there's some part of us that's kind of looking for that in a new partner. And if we are looking for it, that we're bringing that energy to it. And that is where we need to know about energy. We need to know about how our thoughts create our reality and how our thoughts and the energy behind them really, and especially as a woman as well, we can project a lot of emotional content into that. And emotion is also energy. If you find yourself constantly drained, look at what your thoughts are. Look at what emotions that you're putting behind those thoughts. And think to yourself, goodness, how much energy am I expending on this one hurt, for example? And how is that actually creating this over and over and over again? How do I break the cycle? How do I learn to do otherwise? And again, this is where the tools of the path make such a difference. The life activation opens up that new possibility, that new potential, that life purpose, which really gives us that sense of light pouring onto those different aspects of our lives that we really, need to look at. But then the Empower Thyself gives you the tools to wield that in your life and to redirect when those things come up, and we can see ourselves better. We can see when that pattern is popping up and we can think, oh, that needs to be redirected, and then use the tools to redirect it. And that is why it is called Empower Thyself. It's invaluable, really, really invaluable.
It's almost like when I read this book and I thought to myself, because I was checking in with how it made me feel and how, and because I wanted to be aware of, of the energy behind it. I was like scanning it, and I felt all the way through very safe, and I felt very empowered as a woman to be able to set boundaries without it being without me seeming weird, or without it seeming like I'm being over the top, or everything you wrote in here was very balanced, is what I'm trying to say. So for me, it really came from that middle pillar, of that balance of, okay, so I have, this logical, I have these emotions, I'm bringing them into this middle pillar. And when I express myself as an empowered woman, I can actually have a really great experience in dating other, people, or as a married woman, I can actually, still set those boundaries and still bring all these things up in conversation, because just because you're in a relationship with somebody long term doesn't mean that the boundaries don't change, or you want different things. So it's learning about each other.
Yes.
So I really felt that all the way through, and I thought to myself, my goodness, this is the difference of reading something by an initiate, by somebody that has taken the time to work on themselves, that somebody has taken the time and treated herself with honor and respect, that therefore she has received that through these experiences, and that made me feel really safe as a woman. So I just wanted to share that with you and say I just think this is phenomenal, that it's coming from someone who has clearly done a huge amount of work. And for me, I think the whole dating industry, let me just do a little call out, I think they need you on their they need you as their spokesperson. You know, because I could see that the dating world would just have a whole new way of experiencing love and each other and relationships if they could come from this clean, you know, it's very clean in the way that you come from this. So, you know, I just really wanted to share that with you.
Oh, Divina, thank you so much. That's really beautiful. Thank you for saying that and for honoring that aspect, because that is where I really wanted to come from, was the aspect we can still be soft. We can still come from the heart. And it is important, you know, to also have boundaries that understand that we are living in this life where we will come across challenges. And yes, there will be hurts. I mean, it's difficult to be in a relationship where we don't have expectations. And expectations are those things, you know, when they're not met, that in some way then we can take that as an inward hurt. But unless we communicate what those are and understand from the other person why they're not quite at that point yet, or perhaps is it an unreasonable expectation, then we can negotiate. And that is the difference. It's not about compromising. It's not about compromising what your core beliefs are. It's about negotiating where we meet each other, where we come to that middle ground. And it just makes relationships so much more richer. So much richer from the point of view of learning, but so much richer from the depth at which we're able to go to with each other. And the deeper we go, then the more energy can flow between each other and the more love is possible. And I was speaking to a gentleman the other day who had just lost, interestingly, his mother. And I just want to speak to this for a moment, because he said to me, you know, and there is no one else in this entire world who loves me like my mother loves me, where no matter what I do, you know, no matter what I experience in this life, no matter how I act, that she will still love me, and that love is there 100% strong, and that she is gone now. And in that moment, my heart just went out to him, because I thought, oh my gosh, that is the love, the non-judgmental love that everyone is capable of. Everyone is capable of. And if we lived in a world where we are able to flow that more, understanding that yes, these boundaries are important when you're in that romantic relationship, but you know, you're getting to know each other, you're getting to work with each other and to formulate a dynamic between you that works. And so understanding what's important to each of you as individuals, it's really important to explore that. Now, the speed at which you explore that is very much determined on the type of love that you're looking for, and whether it's a more committed relationship, and also whether intuitively it feels right to ask those questions at that minute in time. And that is where our intuition comes in. And often I hear Founder Goodney talk about, you know, the chakras that we use in particular when we're relating as men and women. And, you know, we think of that intuition, the third eye, we think of the heart dynamic, and we think of the base chakra as well when we're, you know, in that passion aspect with each other. So you have the passion, you have the heart, and you have that intuition. That intuition has to come into it when we are deciding, you know, when is it right to speak about something, especially when you're in a loving relationship where the timing might not be right. Your lover, your loved one might be really stressed about someone. And if you're not recognizing that, then you have to ask yourself, how much attention are you really paying to the loved one in your life? What questions are you asking them? Do you really know what's going on deep inside them? And, there are times when someone is not ready to share that. And, particularly men sometimes find it more hard to open up to that. And there are ways of working with that. But maybe that's for another conversation. But men do want to share their hearts. They do. But it's within a very specific, safe environment. And as a couple, we need to be creating that all the time. That's not necessarily something that, and if we're outside of that sacred circle that you create as a couple, that no one else knows about, that no one else, and you're in that depth of a relationship with each other, that's a whole other dynamic. That's a whole other level of, being together. But it's very powerful when it's there. And as a couple, when you're in that committed relationship, that is something very sacred between a couple. And really beautiful to witness in couples. Really, really beautiful. An example to everyone else, what we're aiming for.
Oh, that's so lovely. Thank you. I know we've run out of time, and we've already had in the comments part 3. There's just so much to talk about. But thank you for that, and for sharing your insights, and about dating from a balanced perspective, and a safe perspective, and in a safe way, and one of growth. It's just been phenomenal. I've really enjoyed this. Thank you for sharing. Oh my goodness, thank you for sharing that. It's amazing. And yes, thank you everybody else for watching, and tune in again soon. Thank you, Dr. Ann. We love having you on the show, and I know we're going to be having you back very soon.
Oh, thank you so much, Dr. Kate. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. We'll see you soon.